Hello everyone, welcome to this video where I'm going to be going through my way of farming Desolation. This is a very unique kind of a terrain because it's not an obvious one that you could farm and it's just not as easy to pick up. Timestamps are included in the video, so if you want to skip to a specific part, feel free. I would like to point out as a disclaimer that there could be another more or less efficient way of how to farm this map. This is just how I do things. I try to make it easy, profitable, and fun for everybody involved. Going straight to the expected loot, you're going to get lots of Eyes of Cormier, slivers of twitching forged metal, and something that I can't pronounce. But for real though, you're actually going to get one amalgamated gemstone, lots of unidentified gear, and these special champion bags called battered forged components. The reason why these are really good for this farm is because they give out expensive recipes, forged weapons, which are really nice on the TP, and extra unidentified gear because it's a post-POF bag. Post-POF bag meaning that any champion bags that came out when Path of Fire came out, such as the bags that come from awakened mobs, they actually give out extra unidentified gear than any bags before Path of Fire. For the requirements, there's only two things that you need. One is a basic mount just to get across everything, and two, you do need a skimmer for the GW2 worm meta. In the footage right now, I'm using the skimmer over a river of sulfur to grab sulfur crystals. These crystals are used to finish the meta. You can also be really clutch and use a sky scale to hover over the river and use that to grab the crystal really quick before you suffocate. So I said there was only two requirements, but there's actually three. I'm just way too lazy to go back in the footage and just remove all my stuff and delete it. The third and last thing that you will need is people. You will need at least 15 people for this farm in order to work because you need to spawn those champions. If they don't spawn, this farm will not work at all. And to help out with this train, I'll put a link on the top right corner, and this link will take you to the timer page guide, and my timer page on my website at pewresearchcenter.com will display all the times. It'll tell you when the events are up, when it's upcoming, etc, etc. Now for my plan, I always start with either the Forge raiding parties or the Redeemer Kosan event. There are 5 different locations for the Forge raiding parties, and there's only one location for the Redeemer Kosan, but there's multiple different routes for that single event. What's great about these events is that they can spawn champion forged enemies, which can drop those forged champion bags that we were talking about earlier. Now at the same time this is happening at the start of the train, the meta for the Maw of Torment also happens, but I do skip the first events. The reason why I skip it is because I'm just trying to maximize my time of getting forged champions, and it's a lot easier time to get them from either the Redeemer Kosan event or the Forge raiding parties. You can only fail the first part of the meta, which has a 10-minute timer, so that's your limit before you actually have to do the meta. My plan is, if I'm doing the Redeemer Kosan first, that usually takes like 5 to 6 minutes, so I would only have time to do that, then prep for the meta. If I am doing the Forge raiding parties, then I do the full 5 and then prep the party. My rule of thumb is if the meta is hitting about 5 minutes until the second event starts, then I split the meta into these 3 different locations on the map. I'll explain more about the meta when we actually do the gameplay later in the video. After the meta, there should be a little bit of time before the next meta, which is GW2 worms that happens at the 30-minute mark of the hour. So from there, I just repeat what I did in the start, which is do the Forge raiding parties, but now I also include Redeemer Kosan if they are all up. That should give you enough time before the meta starts, but if there's not, there's also an additional event that you could do if it is up, which is called the Ghost Eaters event. This isn't a Forge event, but it's a very simple event where you just kill lots and lots of awakened mobs, and there's always going to be a champion or two or maybe more that will spawn. The event itself sits right next to the meta, so you'll know exactly when it starts. For the meta itself, it will take about 10 to 15 minutes to do, and this is also another thing I will explain during the gameplay of the video. For an hour-long train, there should be about 10 to 15 minutes left, so what I like to do is finish up more Forge raiding parties, Redeemer Kosan, and a few other events. These few other events include a Forge champion that occurs at the very south, an event chain called the Ghost Kids, and a champion ooze. These events can be used as fillers. For example, the Forge event that happens at the south, you can do that after finishing the raiding parties and hope that it's up. The Ghost Kid event and the Champion Ooze can be happening around the same time after the GW2 worm since you're already there. Though I should point out the Ghost Kit event, it does have an event chain. So the first event, if it's there, will be a gathering event that does take a while. And then there's some dialogue, and then there'll be an escort that does spawn a lot of champions, like Champion Ghost and Champion Oozes. And then it's going to spawn a third escort, which I do not do, which goes south, and that takes a while. Now for the gameplay footage, I will go through one of my trials and talk about everything that I do. So at the start here, I actually did not have 15 people, I had 14, which is okay, but I would have preferred 15 or more, 25 being a really great spot. The first event, right when we started moving, Redeemer Kosan was just to our left, and so we just decided to do that. I said earlier that this event has multiple paths. The path that is in the footage right now is the best path that it could have taken, which is at the end of this event, it will spawn a defense event. It will just keep summoning waves and waves of forged enemies. Other paths it could have taken would have been more of an escort type of mission, where it would just go through this whole area, and sometimes it will spawn forge mobs and awaken mobs. I think for this event alone, I think we just straight up got 4 forged champions, which is amazing to start off with. Okay, so now I'm splitting up the squad for the meta. As you can see on the minimap, the first event has already started, and this is the one that I said that you could fail and it will still continue. So there's less than 4 minutes left, and I kind of have to hurry and split up the squad as much as possible. During that last event, I split up and moved people to subgroups in order to make sure that people can stick together, because for this escorts you will need at least maybe 5 people just to be safe. A different scenario that could have happened, we could have started with the forge raiding parties and we would have went west all the way south. And in the footage that you saw, I started grouping the groups from north to south, but I could have done it backwards if it were the other case. Now that the escorts are about to begin, people have to start at the very beginning, because this NPC does aggro to anything and everything that is red. So in order to make sure, 1, it doesn't bug, and 2, it doesn't get caught in anything, just make sure that everybody's at the start and make sure they kill everything. Anything red, gates, cannon, mobs, you name it. With enough people, these escorts individually could spawn champions, but because we started off with a limited amount of people, none of us got a single champion, which it's okay. If we were to do the pre-event, the one that we did skip for this meta, it would have cleared out a lot of these mobs and probably have made this a lot faster. But I prefer to have more fun doing the other events and hope for more champions. So now our escort has reached its final destination. What we're doing right now is we're killing a forge that has something like along the lines of like realm. And what we're doing is we're killing that thing and it's dropping these realm residue, and we're picking that up and grabbing a portal spike and then going to the pillar in the middle and pressing F to destroy it. After you damaged enough of it, an elite will spawn, which we have to kill. And after you kill that elite, a chest will spawn. And since there's 3 escorts, all 3 of us are doing the exact same thing, and there's going to be 3 chests that everybody can go grab. So once the other ones have finished, either you can go help them if they didn't finish, or if all of them have finished, you can go to the other ones and grab all their chests. The last event for this meta is a big forge champion. He will spawn near the waypoint north of the meta location. The only thing you need to know about this boss is avoid his fiery streak, and he will knock people up and knock them down. And he will also put shields around him, and you want to attack him where the shields aren't around him. If you do have enough people for this event, champions will spawn on the side, so make sure you tag them, because if you kill the boss before you even tag one of the champions, they will despawn. This is where that one augmented gemstone comes from. Since we are doing the other meta on the same map, we will not get a second augmented gemstone. After the meta, I did check for Redeemer Kosan to see if it was up, but it was not, and so we are doing the forge raiding parties. I always go counterclockwise from around the maw, because it's 1 next to the waypoint, and 2 it's just a lot easier to get to. For these forge raiding parties, how they work is that there is a group of forge that just roam around a certain area, and after you kill the first wave, a second wave will spawn. So what you want to do is you want your group to be there before you kill the first wave, so that when the second wave spawns, it will be upscaled and hope that you will get champions. Sometimes if you're really lucky and you get the spawn time exactly right and the spawn location exactly right, you could get a champion on the first initial wave and then another in the second wave. I normally don't expect all 5 of the raiding parties to be up, so meh. After the raiding party, we did luckily get the champion forge. Now that that's done, the Redeemer Coastline event should be back up at the waypoint. And so we went back, checked if it was up, and it was. So we started it. And then while we're starting it, there was actually the raiding party just a little bit to the west of us. And we went to go poke that and then went right back to Redeemer Coastline. If you notice now, the Redeemer Coastline now has a totally different route than what we did initially. So now we just kind of hope that this escort will bring a lot of champions, but unfortunately in this case not a single champion did spawn from this event. Skipping to the next event, all we did was we went to the forge raiding parties. They have such a low cooldown that they actually just went back up all over again. So we went around them all and just circled around it and hoped that we got champions. After a couple of those raiding parties and successfully gotten a couple of champions, we went to the Junundu Worms meta. The unique thing about this meta is that while it does start at the 30-minute mark of the hour, you can choose when to start it. So right here, we just talk to these NPCs and it's going to start the meta. The meta starts 3 events simultaneously. There are 3 gathering events and they all do exactly the same thing. This is where your sky scale or skimmer is useful because you need to grab those sulfur crystals in the sulfur and then turn them all in. What I like to do is turn 1 of each first so I can get 3 events credits at the end and then just finish off whatever is left. After you completed all 3 gathering events, there are 2 more events that do spawn. These are forts that need to be captured, but they are covered in a shield that only the worms can destroy. So while the worms are destroying that, there are 2 champions at each gate and you have to kill them both in order to pass through. Just make sure you do not stand on top of the champions because they do move, and if they move to the wall then they get invulnerable. Once your squad is entered through the forts, you can go ahead and kill these catapults and trebuchets. Look out because there might be champions that will spawn. If we were to do this meta and not do the previous meta, this meta would have given you the augmented gemstone, but since we already did the other one, we're not going to get it. But make sure you gather the chests that will spawn in the middle of each fort. You can gather both of them even if you don't do both of them. They will give you the elegy mosaics and some rares and whatnot. After the meta, there's still about like 15 minutes left, and so we went east and checked out if there was the Ghost Eater or the Ghost Kids event. And the Ghost Kids event pre-event is up, which is a gathering event that took forever, and I kind of regret doing it because it took forever. But whatever, what's done is done. I just kind of wanted to do something a little different. So after we do that, there's some dialogue to start the next event. So we went south and we checked the Ghost Eater event, and luckily it was up, and so we stayed here and killed all these awakened. They spawned from these portals, and you want to kill the Ghost Eaters to finish the event, but just make sure you just roam around and check if there's any champions. After the Ghost Eater, we went to the Ghost Kids event, and now it's the escorts. And this escort spawned a lot of champion ghosts and oozes, though unfortunately I don't think we got a single champion ghost from this trial, and I think there was only like 1 champion ooze, so I regret this even more doing. You want to stick next to these kids because this event is unique to where if you do not have anybody next to these kids, they kind of seem like they get lost and they just don't go anywhere. So once we finish this escort, there is a champion ooze that spawns next to us and he dies really quickly. While there is a champion Jin right next to us, the reason why we don't do him, even though he is kind of squishy too, is that he actually moves a lot during the fight. At this point, there's still about 5 to 6 minutes left before we hit 1 hour of this train. And so we just finish off with the either Redeemer Kosan or the Forge raiding parties. We got really lucky with the Redeemer Kosan event this time because just like what we did at the start of the train, the really good route for this event is starting again. And so now we get all those waves of Forge enemies, and we did get a champion or 2. After Redeemer Kosan, we finish it off with all those raiding parties, and we got lucky at the end and we got the champion Forge as well. That's the end of this train. In this video, we went through a unique train of Desolation. I've never personally seen anyone run a train like this besides the meta train, but I hope this video helps open the eyes of commanders or people who would like to try this train out with their guild or group one day. It's a really fun and different train that is extremely profitable, with players even getting dropped more than 10 gold for the item itself. It's kind of like feeding into our gambling addiction because I'm doing this with my guild and like some other players, and we like to we kind of scream every time there's a champion, and it's a gamble because since it's the forged champions and we get those unique champion bags, sometimes one of us will get a skin that's worth like 10 gold, or some of us will get a recipe that's worth 10 gold. In terms of loot, I'll put a link in the description for my trial runs and exactly what I got. In this specific instance, I did earn about 25 gold for the hour, but I had guildies probably close to 30 or 40 gold for getting lucky with recipes and skins. So thank you for watching this video. I hope this was interesting and informative. This farm is definitely Choya approved. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more. Check out my website at pewresearchcenter.com. If you want to support me even more, I'll put links in the description below.